Welcome to the show. Picture this. A forklift operator gets struck by his own forklift on night shift in a warehouse, and within about 6 minutes, some galah says, "Well, operator error." There it is. Nice, tidy, emotionally satisfying. Wrap it up, pin it on a human, and everyone gets to go home feeling like the mystery's solved. Except it usually isn't. It's just the fastest rubbish answer in the room. Blame feels good because it gives you a villain, and villains are convenient. But ICAM wasn't built for convenience. It was built because Professor James Reason and the whole organizational accident model showed us something pretty uncomfortable. Incidents are rarely one dumb thing done by one dumb person at one dumb moment. They're a stack. Latent conditions, local task conditions, active failures, and absent or failed defenses, all lining up like holes in Swiss cheese. And when those holes line up, bang, you've got your incident. Now, if you're new to this, stick with me. In ICAM, we're not saying people don't make errors. Of course they do. Slips, lapses, mistakes, violations, that's all real. The safety-wise material is dead clear on that. But concluding human error by itself does bugger all to prevent recurrence. Because the real question is not just what the person did, it's what the system set them up to deal with, or failed to deal with. Take that level crossing example from the training material. On the surface, a road train driver failed to stop and a train driver died. If you're lazy, that becomes driver negligence. Done. Except dig a bit and it gets ugly. The induction loop had been placed at 260 meters instead of the 300 meters that would have given 35 seconds of warning. The train was traveling at 42 kilometers an hour in a 25 zone, which chopped signal time down to 11 seconds. Police later calculated the road train needed 14 seconds reaction and braking time. In other words, by the time the thing was truly visible and the warning was meaningful, the crash was already baked in. And that's before you layer in the road geometry, the left-hand bend, the trees masking the line, the low winter sun washing out the signals, the accepted practice of driving the train from the front footwell with a remote, and management making design and change decisions years earlier. That's the reason model in steel-capped boots. Latent conditions from management decisions, local environmental conditions on the day, unsafe acts at the sharp end, and defenses that either weren't there or weren't strong enough. So here's the tension. Blame shuts down learning because once you've decided who to blame, you stop being curious. Proper investigation does the opposite. It asks, what controls should have prevented this? What conditions promoted the error? What organizational factors sat there quietly, sometimes for years, waiting for their moment? If your investigation starts and ends with the worker, you're not investigating. You're just decorating your prejudice with a logo. And this is where the bill arrives. Blame culture doesn't just make you look old-fashioned, it makes your reports weak. SafetyWise has been hammering this point for good reason. Shallow findings, recycled recommendations, and the same event happening again. Different date, different shift, same circus. You see it all the time. A report says, retrain the worker, remind staff to follow procedure, conduct a toolbox talk. That's not a recommendation. That's an organizational shrug in a high-vis vest. If your answer to every event is another PowerPoint and a stern email, don't act stunned when the next incident looks suspiciously familiar. Funny that. Even 5 whys gets butchered in blame cultures. Used properly, it can be handy for lower-level incidents. It asks why until you hit an organizational factor. But the training material is honest about its limits. It's subjective, can follow one causal chain, and depends heavily on asking the right problem question. In the wrong hands, 5 whys becomes 1 why. Why did it happen? Because Bob stuffed up. End of workshop. Morning tea. Zero learning. A fair and just culture is the antidote. And no, that doesn't mean a free pass. That's another myth that needs to be shot behind the shed. Fair and just culture means we distinguish honest mistakes from intentional violations. A slip is not the same as reckless behavior. A knowledge-based mistake in a novel task is not the same as someone knowingly taking a selfish shortcut. The safety-wise decision models are very clear on that line. Investigate first. Understand the system first. Then, if there's uncertainty about accountability, apply a separate, fair and just culture process. Not before, after.
I've seen what happens when you don't do that. Workers go quiet. Not dramatic quiet. Worse, practical quiet. They stop reporting the near miss. They stop telling you the workaround everyone uses. They stop mentioning the supervisor who said, just get it done. They give you the polished version, the safe version, the version that won't get them marched into an office on Friday Arvo. I remember talking to a bloke years ago after an event, not going to name the site, and I asked him why nobody had raised the issue earlier. He just looked at me and said, because last time someone spoke up, they became the problem. That line sticks with you. Once the process loses trust, your interviews are contaminated before you've even sat down. Memory is already fallible. The training material says that outright. Perception, retention, recall, distraction, elapsed time, trauma, personality. Add fear to that, and good luck getting the real story. So the cost of blame culture is not just moral, it's operational. You lose data, you lose credibility, you lose learning, and then you lose the right to act surprised when history comes around for another lap. So what do you do instead? Nothing mystical. You get disciplined. Facts first, always. The investigation model is pretty simple when you stop trying to be clever. Immediate actions, planning, data gathering, data organization, data analysis, recommend, report. Goal: gather, organize, analyze, learn. That sequence matters. Start by planning your data gathering with PEPO. People, environment, equipment, procedures, organization. Brainstorm your Mark 1 first, the data sources you think you'll need. Then go collect the evidence and build Mark 2 with actual facts. And for the love of all things sensible, separate contributing from non-contributing factors. Not every fact matters causally. The time of the incident might matter. The color of someone's lunchbox probably doesn't. Then build a timeline, a proper one. Pre-incident events, the incident itself, the point where control was first lost, and post-incident events, until the hazard is under control. Timelines aren't admin fluff. They resolve conflicting information, expose gaps, and stop you from freestyling theory like some budget detective show. Once you've got facts and sequence, then analyze. In ICAM, move the contributing factors into the right buckets. Absent or failed defenses, individual or team actions, task or environmental conditions, organizational factors. That's where you stop whacking the player and start redesigning the game. Was the defense missing? Was the procedure inadequate? Was there no risk assessment? Was there passive tolerance of violations? Was training absent? Was management of change ignored? Was contractor management weak? Those are the things that actually change outcomes next time. Interviews matter here too, and not the interrogations some people still call interviews. Start broad, free recall, then open questions, then active listening, paraphrasing, closed questions for clarification, and leading questions only with real caution. Don't diagnose, don't rush in with jargon, don't criticize, don't record without permission, don't interview someone in shock or pain. That's not just courtesy, it's evidence quality. Management's role matters as well. Good leaders provide terms of reference, resources, decent review, and they test recommendations properly. Are they supported by the analysis? Are they practical? Do they create new risks? Do they target systems and controls? Are they smarter, specific, measurable, accountable, reasonable, timely, effective, reviewed? And where possible, are they higher up the hierarchy of controls than tell people to be careful? Because if your big fix is remind operators not to get hit by forklifts, congratulations, you've achieved absolutely nothing except wasting printer toner. Useful accountability says this:
People are accountable for their actions, yes, but leaders are accountable for the conditions, controls, resources, supervision, training, planning, and culture that shape those actions. That's the grown-up version. That's the one that actually prevents recurrence. So I'll leave you with the only question that really matters when the dust settles and the report lands on the table. Does your organization want the comfort of blame or the discomfort of truth? Because you usually don't get both. Cheers.